we have Coach Bieniemy. So another coaching cycle, and Coach Bieniemy did not get hired as a head coach. But this year's a different wrinkle in it, where he's a free agent. So his contract was up with Kansas City. So right now he's a free agent, and he's reportedly kind of weighing his options right now. And as a little while ago, Aaron Wilson of Pro Football Network reported that if Coach Bieniemy does not go back to Kansas City will contemplate bringing back Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator, or JD, and your neck of the woods, looking at Kentucky's offensive coordinator / QB's coach, Liam Cohen. So I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on this entire Eric Bieniemy situation? Should he leave and get out of Andy Reid's kind of shadow, even though he is the one calling plays, or just wait and sign with Kansas City till Andy Reid retires?
Personally, I would love for him to stay. We can sit here and harp on the things that the offense hasn't done, as far as what they don't do in red zone, how we aren't all that good when we get in the red zone with scoring touchdowns. We don't capitalize on the short yardage plays, but we can sit there and talk about the good things of how exciting the offense is when they're at full power, at full power. But the duo together, they've created a phenomenal team together to sit back and watch. They're a lot of fun to watch. Come up with some crazy plays that, like I said earlier, exciting when the connections happen. I would love to see Eric take over after Andy's done. I don't know when Andy wants to be done with this. A lot of coaches, well, I won't say a lot, but some of the coaches, heck, I want to say Belichick and probably Pete Carroll are the two oldest. Andy's right there with him. With the success that those guys have had, all three got Super Bowl rings. All three have had very, very successful careers. You just don't know when they want to hang it up and enjoy, whatever remaining years of their life. So Andy's had it rough, with two of his kids in the situations they've been in, the way the team has kind of fallen apart in the last 2 years, and Super Bowl last year and not making the Super Bowl this year, the collapse in the playoffs. I don't know if it's taking a toll on him mentally. At some point you would think so, especially with what his kids have gone through. So I think it'd be a good thing, for him to hand the keys to Eric Bieniemy if he wants to retire soon. But the rest of that stuff with what's happening with, Black coaches not being given the chances to prove themselves, and even when the ones that have gotten fired, that have gone on to coach and have gotten fired and never hired back, it sucks, as a African American to see it happen, and to know that there's a lot of great minds out there with Black coaches, and that could probably, get a team to the Super Bowl. And so you hate to see it and hear those stories, but it's a reality of what we're faced with. But I'd love to see Eric Bieniemy take over a team. If it's not Kansas City, then definitely somewhere else. So glad to have him back this year. Like you said, if Andy wants to retire soon and let him take over, I think majority of us will be happy with that.
Yeah, kind of my input on this is, with EB, he without a doubt deserves to be a head coach somewhere. And the reality is, for whatever reason, he hasn't had that opportunity. For whatever reason, they're not hiring him. They've heard things about, he doesn't particularly interview well, all these different things. But the reality, staying in Kansas City, he's going to be under Andy Reid's shadow. And so he'll never get the full credit as far as calling plays. And you see that everywhere. They just won't talk. They won't talk about what, his genius of calling some of the plays. Every time something happens, something good happens, oh, that was Andy's play. That was Andy's call. I know Andy said something, about the one play where they didn't score at the half. And he said, I probably should have gave Patrick a better play. And the reality is Andy has the last say It's just that's how these things work anyway. So it doesn't matter who's the offense coordinator, who's the defense coordinator. The head coach has the last say in every single play that is, especially a play like that of that magnitude. Now, with that being said, I think EB should go out and start sniffing around to see what may be out there. You know, why not? Why not go out and see what's going on? Like E was talking about, just kind of, piggybacking off that, when you talk about some of these opportunities, that some of the teams that was out there, what was a good job? Some of the good fits that the good jobs that EB could have been at least potentially gotten have been gone. They've already been, given up to other guys. And so I don't know. EB, I would love for him to stay in Kansas City. And Andy, like you said, handed the keys over to EB, but there's no indication that Andy's ready to go anywhere. And so that's part of the problem with a guy who is a football guy like Andy. It's like, what is he going to do? He's not going to go home. I don't think he'll go on TV. He's not really one of those guys like color commentary, talkative guys. I don't really see him doing that. So, yeah, he can go, to his family, but I think him being a head coach gives him solace. And so it gives him a little bit of a break from, real life. Sometimes the thing is when you embrace some of the things that happen in your life, you need that place where you can go to, that happy place. And for him, being a head coach is that place for him. So that's my thing on that with Andy and EB. I would love for EB to say, hey, look, 2 years or next year, please take over. Well, with that being said, talking about Nagy and then Liam Cohen, look, Nagy's been here. It didn't do particularly well up there in Chicago. Did a great job with Alex Smith and those guys with the offense, right? But he was still like, and he was one of those guys, him and Doug Peterson, well, they called plays when he's here. Well, did they? EB done afforded that type of grace or, that type of, magnitude as far as like that deal. But the other guy, Cohen, man, I watched him with UK, and he's a brilliant guy. He really is. Some of the things that UK won, the games that they won, was really off his shoulders, some of the game call. And I just watched, just being an offensive mind, being, offensive coordinator, stuff like that. I watched some of the sets that he did, the situations. I mean, when I'm telling you, everything was on point. It was clicking. It was just that type of that beat, that rhythm. He had it. He had it. I was sitting back in awe. I was like, wow, that was a wonderful call. It was a great call on that play. And so he has that. I don't know as far as like what the seriousness of him getting here, but look, EB loves to still have him, without a doubt, here in Kansas City. I'm just selfish like that. EB is my guy. I love him to death. I know EB. So if he can go somewhere else and make a name for himself, then hats off to him, right? But, we're talking about some of these jobs are still open, man. But these things that need to be addressed as far as what's been happening these past few weeks and the things that's been happening over the years. And I'm just telling you from my experience as a Black coach in college, even that track record with hiring Black coaches is abysmal, even in college. They talk about NFL. College is even worse. So I think some of these things might get at least rectified, at least looked into. And I think that's a good thing. Sometimes you got to have tough conversations to get to it. Because I think sometimes people get into, the feelings and thinking, look, man, there's an issue and a problem here. If it wasn't, they wouldn't introduce a rule like the Rooney Rule, right? That's the way I look at it. And so when these things exist, it means that there exists, here lies in a problem. So, EB, if he can stay here, fine. But if he can find a place that would appreciate him, I'm not saying that Kansas City doesn't appreciate him, but he could be a head coach, that's what I would love for him to do.
I guess for me, because hearing people talk about, maybe he should get out of Andy Reid's shadow and go to, say New Orleans, for example. That's a place he interviewed for the head coach position. He goes to New Orleans. That's not really a sexy offense. I mean, what if they go there and they're not good? They're 5-11 team. Their offense isn't good. I mean, is that going to be a reflection on him, or he could stay as being Andy Reid's, protege, as the offensive coordinator here with one of the best offenses in the league? He may not get the full credit, but his team will always be good. The offense will always be good. I mean, I guess I just don't see the sense in him going elsewhere to be an OC, the same exact position.
Yeah. Uh, in New Orleans, man, that offense is decimated now with everything that's going on with Kamara too. I mean, you really don't have any weapons, man. I mean, it's you're talking about a bad situation. Quarterback wise, I mean, who you got there? Jameis Winston gonna come back from the tear and whatnot. I mean, he may not be the same guy. So it's just gonna be a tough situation altogether, man. We're talking about he's using Scotch tape to put an offense together down there for real. So I agree with you on that for sure. So if you could stay somewhere where you got a contention for a Super Bowl, stay there without a doubt. And look, and maybe behind the scenes, they might be talking. They might be like, look, EB, you stay here. Andy's talking about leaving next year. This is going to be yours. So we don't know what's going on behind closed doors as far as these deals.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, are you guys surprised he's mulling his options? I guess that's my question. Are you surprised he's mulling his option as potentially go somewhere else and be the same position?
Okay.
Well, am I surprised? No, I'm not at all. Because the thing is, it's been the talk. It's been a conversation. The conversation has been, EB's not getting the credit that's due to him. He's just not. And so, like I said before, Andy, is he really calling the plays? When Andy, kind of spoke for him, like, look, man, he's the one calling the plays. Is that him just kind of, trying to, do a favor for EB? And when you see EB up there, you can see him calling the plays. You can tell it. I could almost kind of see the difference in play calling when it comes in. Maybe if, like Andy says, like, hey, okay, whatever this. But EB is just running things through him like, look, man, what do you think about this play? What do you think about that? And so they all got to be on the same page. I mean, that's just how, coaching goes. It does. The head coach he's in offensive meetings. He's in defensive meetings. He's talking to his coordinators. He wants to know what's going on. He's not oblivious to things that's happening. He's right there. And he's got him right there in the ear. So if it's something he don't like, he's like, hey, man, I don't really like that. Hey, EB, what do you think about this play? So it's just the fact that EB is there with Andy. It's always going to be those things because, it's just kind of like those, the tropes being put like, oh, well, he's not really the guy. It's bogus, man. It's bogus. I hate when people say it because he is calling the plays.
Yeah.
It's tough either way. Is there a right position? Is there a right job out there for EB? I don't think any coach wants to go into the position of where a lot of these guys just came from being fired, which basically says that you don't have all the right pieces and it's going to take some time to build up to where you are. Well, especially like being a Black coach. Are you given the proper time to build and then excel? And the cases that we've seen, no. After a couple of years, you're gone, and then you're demoted to something, coordinator, position coach. So, and that opportunity to be a head coach is not presented to you anymore. So, is it a matter of EB just wanting to go to these places, of which have been available? I don't know that, because there hasn't been a sexy job that's out there. Like with the key pieces of which. Hell, we know he's a good coach. Shit, you played, you had a good college career, you had a good NFL career, you won a Super Bowl, you transformed, a team coming in with a new quarterback into a high-powered offensive team. So, yeah, I think your resume kind of speaks for itself, but are you want to go and take over a team that's below 500 and to make them a playoff team the next year? I don't think any coach has done that so far within a first year, second year. So, is there a sexy team out there for him? I don't see it. So is it a matter of him just, wanting to wait here and see what happens with Andy? Maybe he and Andy have had these conversations. Him, Andy, and Mr. Hunt, Clark Hunt. I don't know that. But is he worthy of a head coaching job? 100%. 100%. He's way overdue. I think he's put all the time in necessary to say that he's head coach quality. But again, is there a job out there that says, right now, I can get you into the playoffs? I don't see that with any team that's fired all their coaches. And with that being said, is there a fair opportunity for the African-American coaches that don't get to the playoffs? It hasn't been that way. So
I think the only job that I saw that was kind of the one that had the most kind of potentials, Minnesota's offense. If Rodgers isn't there next year, that NFC North is kind of wide open next year in Green Bay or in Minnesota. You got Dalvin Cook, you got the quarterback situation is kind of iffy, but
Jefferson.
you got Thielen and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And he used to coach up there too. So he's got a rapport with him, so.
That was the early rumor that he was going to get that job, and I don't know if he ever interviewed with them. I think he interviewed with New Orleans and Denver, and that was it. But yeah, well, hopefully EB stays with us, and hopefully they do have something worked out where he can take over in the future. But he needs to get that inked up, get that contract signed to come back.